Whether it's milk, cheese, yoghurt or ice cream, British people love their dairy. Dairy UK says more than 90% of them regularly consume dairy products. But with Brexit around the corner, consumers might find it harder to get their favourite foods, or will have to pay more for the privilege.
The UK is not self-sufficient when it comes to dairy, so approximately 16% of the dairy products that are sold in shops are actually imported. From a very practical perspective, if there are border controls, that's going to create delays of products getting through. That will then add costs.
Arla Foods UK is the biggest dairy company in Britain, and it's looking ahead to what Brexit will do to its bottom line.
Arla is a cooperative owned by farmers in different countries around Europe. The UK also gets around 98% of its dairy imports from the EU. That's got Arla worried that even small changes to the tightly calibrated supply chain could have bigger knock-on effects.
Arla is so concerned it commissioned a report from the London School of Economics. Its analysis suggests Brexit will likely result in some border checks.
When you start introducing border checks, these things will obviously not be so frictionless. And there are sort of four aspects which will really hurt the dairy sector.
Those include increased administration costs for businesses making customs declarations for the first time and delays caused by inspections at ports.
A 7-minute check at the border, where there was previously none, is going to create a tailback of around 10 hours. And if you sort of look at the median wage for lorry drivers, that's going to be about an extra £111. That's a significant cost. That also doesn't include the loss of perishable good life, it doesn't include fuel costs, it doesn't include the fact that lorry drivers are only allowed to drive a certain number of hours per day.
A free trade agreement between the UK and the EU isn't a certainty, and a reversion to WTO rules would see dairy products hit with an average tariff of 35%. Dairy lovers will be hoping pragmatism wins out at the negotiating table to keep the cream flowing. Shaun Hassett for TRT World, London.
Steve Keen is an economics professor at Kingston University. He joins us now from Amsterdam. Welcome to the program. As we mentioned, the British government has released the first of these so-called technical notices, giving advice to businesses, people and other organisations in the event of a no-deal scenario. The government says this is a worst-case scenario and is hopeful that a deal will be reached. What are your thoughts? Are you as confident?
Well, no, because two reasons. One, because I actually voted for Brexit not because I thought it would be good for the UK, but because I regard the European Union as bad for Europe. But having said that, I've watched the sheer incompetence of the way the British have handled this so far. And on the other side, the European Union doesn't want it to be easy for anybody to leave the European Union, and they were willing to make an example, of course, of Greece, when Greece tried to do it, and a very brutal example. They were doing a similar thing in the way they behaved towards Britain. So you have one side negotiating incompetently and the other side negotiating in bad faith. I think ultimately some sort of arrangement will be made which meets between a no deal and a negotiated exit. But in one sense, the European Union does not want this to be a successful process.
Yes, there are just 7 months to go before the UK technically has to leave the EU. There is a school of thought that suggests perhaps it won't happen by then or it won't happen altogether. Do you believe that that's something that the government needs to canvass?
Well, I think I may well have to delay the entire thing because, of course, don't forget this referendum was called with the expectation it would be lost. And a person who called it lost his office instead. Cameron goes and then Osborne. So this has all been a comedy of errors, the whole process. And I wouldn't be at all amazed to see that there's some decision to delay it. There was no way they were prepared for the vote to go in the direction it actually went. And the European Union itself was not prepared to be able to make an exit. It's rather like you got involved in an Irish marriage in the 1960s. There was no expectation you could ever leave the marriage. And just like the Roman Catholic Church made it as hard as possible to leave, the European Union's done the same thing. So I can see this being delayed rather than being executed and perhaps never actually coming to fruition.
Okay, so as you say, you've publicly supported Brexit. You said you voted for it, but in the meantime, as these negotiations have been drawn out, there's been a lot of uncertainty on the markets. A lot of international institutions, particularly financial institutions, have said that they're going to be basically pulling out thousands out of the London workforce. Do you believe that this is still worth it?
No, frankly, I don't. I think it's been handled so badly that my hope was that Britain voting for Brexit would be a wake-up call to the European Union and make them realise they had to break away from their incredible focus upon austerity, the policies that they imposed upon Greece and Portugal and Spain and so on. That hasn't happened. In fact, you saw that ludicrous tweet by Donald Tusk just earlier this week congratulating Greece on its achievement. Its achievement has been a 25% fall in its GDP and the longest depression in human history. So the wake-up call that I thought Brexit would be for the European Union has not been properly received. So the whole thing has been a waste of time on both sides.
Steve Keen, fascinating to get your thoughts. Thank you so much.